Oh, gentleman from Calvert.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have an amendment at the desk. It's amendment number 124993028/1.
Amendment number 1.
Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment, Madam Speaker.
So ordered.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's my understanding that this bill, Senate Bill 124.
We don't have that.
Sorry. Thanks. It was provided.
Huh?
I'd like to thank my good friend from Southern Maryland for doing that for me.
It's Senate Bill. Can you repeat the number again?
Absolutely, Madam Speaker. It is 124/9933028/1.
Amendment number 1.
Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment, Madam Speaker.
Hold on a second. Do you have it? So ordered.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So this particular bill it's called the Maryland Food System Resiliency Council. And I just want to make sure that I understand the bill. So if there's someone that understands this bill who is the floor leader, I'd love to.
With pleasure.
Floor leader.
So this bill, it looks like its purpose is to change the makeup of the council, and then I guess what I'm trying to figure out is what does the council do?
Yeah, so the council is related to food systems, making sure we have a resilient food system in the state. This council already exists. The bill just moves it to MDEM, which is a new agency. It does add a couple of new members to the council as well.
So I guess one of the things the council does, at least pursuant to the fiscal note, I'm guessing, is that it makes sure that there's enough food in the state that's grown in the state to feed the people of Maryland. Does that sound about right?
Sure, that's one of the sort of broader goals, I would say.
And then I believe the bill also moves the council under the executive branch of state government.
Under MDEM, yep.
So the governor, in theory, I guess, could, if there was an emergency or disaster, he could do certain things under executive orders. I'm presuming, maybe.
I think he probably has emergency powers, irrespective of the bill. Yeah.
Of course. Okay.
Yeah, it's just an advisory council, so it doesn't give the governor any new powers.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. So the purpose of the bill, as my understanding is, it's to make sure there's enough food that is grown in Maryland and that the food is safe. And I think that makes good sense. It also makes good sense to add this amendment. And the purpose of the amendment is to have the very same council that the bill refers to make recommendations on measures, including recommending regulations to prohibit a non-resident alien who is a citizen of the People's Republic of China, a commercial enterprise or business incorporated in the People's Republic of China, or an individual employed by or associated with the government of the People's Republic of China from purchasing agricultural land, including land used for raising livestock that is located in Maryland. So the purpose of the bill is to make sure that the purpose of the amendment, is to make sure, to summarize, that an individual cannot purchase land, agricultural land, in the state of Maryland and operate that land for livestock or agriculture so that we can ensure our food safety and make sure we have minimized food insecurity, and that individual cannot be a member of the CCP or a resident of the PRC. Makes good sense. This is a problem. It's a problem that already does exist. And I think that it makes sense for the council to look into this. And as I said, this amendment says the council shall make recommendations on measures. Okay? Doesn't tell them what to do. It says shall make recommendations on measures. So I think that's pretty straightforward. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. First of all, let me just say I appreciate the maker of the amendment providing the amendment to the committee in advance. It looked very familiar because it actually seems to be taken verbatim from the author of the amendment's bill, HB 968, which is still pending in the Environment and Transportation Committee. But I would urge the body to resist the amendment. With all due respect to the great people who serve on the Maryland Food System Resiliency Council, they are not qualified to deal with issues related to foreign affairs, related to China, related to, for example, the use of real estate investment trusts or shell corporations to buy agricultural land. It's simply a topic that's outside of their expertise. Honestly, with all due respect to the amazing chair, asking this council to study this issue would be sort of like asking the protocol committee to study whether the United States should withdraw from NATO. Vote red.
That's simply not true, because the purpose, Madam Speaker, of this amendment is to make sure we have food security in the state of Maryland and food resiliency. And the purpose of this council is to do exactly that. That's what the bill does. So the comments are simply not so. And I think it's also important to say this for the Republican colleagues that I have in the House of Delegates, namely that there are a lot of Republican bills that are still stuck in committees, including every single one of the priorities of the Republican caucus. And so this is our way of getting our bills on the floor. And we take it very seriously. And this amendment should be taken seriously. We are in a de facto war against the PRC. It is a de facto war, without question. I want to make sure we have enough food in our state, too. I want to make sure that we, the citizens, as well as the people in this legislature, ought not be saying to the citizens, maybe you should all have a garden right now, because we might have a problem if we go to war. And so I think this amendment should be taken seriously, irrespective of what is stuck in committees, because we all know how that goes. This is what we have in front of us, and it works perfectly with this council. That is literally what they're charged to do. Make sure there's enough food in Maryland. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from St. Mary's.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So we have a bill that's stuck in committee and an amendment on the floor. And I always love that argument. Well, the bill's stuck in committee. Well, hey, this is the process here. This is the process. We're allowed to amend bills on the floor. You choose to exercise the supermajority by denying most of the amendments. But this is the process. And I'm trying to figure out why the bill and why is the amendment not being actually considered. I mean, I believe in the golden rule. You treat others as you would have treated to you, have done to you. You know, it's illegal for Americans to own agricultural land in China. There's already 6 states in our country that bans this. There's 8 other states that banned agricultural foreign investment. That's 14 total for those that like to subscribe to Common Core. The Communist Party of China is systematically buying farmland in this country for a reason. And look at the recent track record. Just unleashed a deadly virus on the world, then lied about it. Hey, remember that deal where they told us it came from a wet market? That was a heck of a conspiracy theory if you want to look at conspiracy theories. They just flew a balloon over the country and looking at sensitive military bases. Hey, maybe they were checking out real estate value. You never know. We are being reconned. And lately, they just recently trying to undermine the United States on their oil reserves, trying to replace the dollar. The Communist Party of China is not our friend. We should start treating them as such. This is a good amendment, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from Anne Arundel.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. In other words, those who do not learn from the mistakes of the past are doomed to repeat them. Let me give you an example. In 2008, we faced what was called, or what was said to be, the world's largest financial and investment bank crisis since the Great Depression. What was at the cause of that? Investment bankers. What were they doing? They were lending money out for mortgages, sometimes good mortgages, oftentimes mortgages with exaggerated values, exaggerated income, exaggerated assets, and poor credit. And what they did was then they would put them into a grouping. As an illustration, imagine a bag of 500 mortgages. 250 of them are good, 250 of them are junk. And what they did is they went to Moody's and Standard & Poor's and said, we want you to put a AAA bond rating on this and call it Prime Chuck. And you know what they did? They did. And what happened was pensions, individual portfolios, retirement plans went in to those mortgage-backed securities. And that was all fine and dandy until there was a crack in the dam and the values started to come down. And like a house of cards, it all crumbled, taking billions of dollars of retirement funds, portfolios, dreams down the drain with it. You remember some of the players, Lehman Brothers, Bear Stearns, Countrywide. Everybody in here is old enough to remember what
On
happened.
the amendment.
This is on the amendment, Madam Speaker. Thank you. So what happened? Some of these banks actually survived, and some of the financial advising salespeople said, we have to find a way to recoup these losses. We have to find a way to make some of our investors whole. Where did they look? China. Why did they look at China? One, it was an emerging market. It was one of the fastest growing economies in the world. And they have some of the loosest international financial regulations in the world and still do today. Anybody in here can look this up. It's still ongoing. So what happened? These investment salespeople looked for companies in America, shell companies like they were just brought up, but legitimately traded stock on the U.S. stock exchange companies. Let's call it the One-Eyed Flower Power LLC here in America. Went through all the regulations, being traded on the U.S. stock exchange. Then they targeted companies in China. Let's call them Wind Power Forever in China. And they contacted them and said, listen, how would you like for us to take your Chinese company to the U.S. stock exchange? You've been sputtering around over there. Here's what we need you to do. If you do what we ask, we are going to bring tremendous value to your company. This is how we're going to do it. We are going to do what's called a reverse merger. Here's how a reverse merger works. They merge that Chinese company with an American company. And they take it to the stock exchange that's already there. But what they ask the Chinese companies to do is take your financial documentation, your balance sheets, your revenues, and multiply it times 10. So if you make $400,000 in China, we want you to put on your financial sheets that you make $4 million a year. If they rebutted, they said, don't worry about it. You will not get in trouble in China because, and this is fact, international regulations say they go through a variable interest entity. Chinese companies use this structure to skirt U.S. financial regulations. Chinese government refuses to allow any of the audit firms from releasing its finding without consent of the Chinese financial regulators. And voila, now they're on the U.S. stock exchange. And these salespeople then called their buddies, the financial journalists, and said, listen, we want you to look at this Chinese company. It's doing $4 million a year in revenue. And they would then start to call their American investors and say, listen, we know you lost your shirt. We have the opportunity of a lifetime for you. Do you want to get on the ground floor of a Chinese company that's currently trading at $3 a share right now? We believe it's going to go to $30 a share. If you don't believe me, there's a company called Roth Capital. Roth Capital is well known. They're on the West Coast for having huge parties, to the point where Snoop Dogg played there, Rat played there, Poison played there. General Wesley Clark was on their board. Roth Capital, you can look them up. And this went on for a long time until a couple investment banks up north looked at it and said, something's not right here. They then looked to China, sent investigators over there and found out that the shell company in China really wasn't producing anything. And they shorted it. Once again, taking millions upon billions of taxpayer dollars down with it. Now, why is it important to this amendment? Because I just illustrated to you, they do not live by our financial regulations. So they can be taking U.S. money in these Chinese companies and buying land here in Maryland. We should not allow that. That is dangerous to everybody in here. It puts us at risk of what we did in 2008. Let me end this with another Chinese proverb that says you cannot catch fish in clean water. In muddy water, you can catch a lot of fish. Let's not muddy the waters by letting this Ponzi scheme of sending money over to China and back here to buy our land happen. With that, I push the amendment, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
Floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Speaking of Snoop Dogg, I feel like I may need some gin and juice after all that talking. First of all, I don't at all mean to bemoan the minority's right to put amendments on the floor, and I also don't mean to belittle this issue at all. It's a serious issue, and in fact, bipartisan legislators across the country have taken actions on this. It's something Democrats have supported, Republicans have supported, but it's really complex. As we just heard the gentleman from Anne Arundel talk about, we have to deal with shell corporations, we have to deal with all sorts of complex financial instruments. We have to make sure that by banning the Chinese government from buying property, we're not making it more opaque. We're not essentially encouraging them to use things like real estate investment trust, thereby making it even less transparent. It's a complicated issue. It's one that does deserve debate and study, I think. However, this Food System Resiliency Council, which is mostly made up of nonprofit food advocates and public school teachers, is not the vehicle to discuss something this complex and this touching so substantively on foreign affairs. So again, Madam Speaker, I would urge the body to resist the amendment.
Okay.
Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from Baltimore County.
Just real quick, and I appreciate the gentleman's point because he clearly thinks this is a potential issue, and I agree with a lot of those who spoke already. And I think to what happened earlier today with the minimum wage as an example, a bill that we passed last year or several years ago that we came back in this body and changed, I think because of this country's far too dependent reliance on the Chinese for whether it's consumer goods, commercial goods, medical supplies, pharmaceuticals, I think something needs to be done now. And if we figure out that for whatever reason we have to adjust this next year, then we can come back next year and adjust it. But you're talking about a growing bipartisan concern, as he said, that, again, I agree with, in Washington, D.C., that says this is a serious issue. This is an issue that here in Maryland we can finally say that we're going to lead on something that we all can hopefully agree on, that something needs to be done here to protect our food source. And I also agree with this amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
On the amendment, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
No. Roll call.
Roll call.
Madam Speaker.
Clerk will take the call. The amendment fails. Are there any additional amendments to the bill to its title? Recognizing gentleman.